there is not going to be a silver bullet here. There is going to be a series of things we do to take back the government from corporations.
All right,
and it will include raising taxes.
Are you going to come up with ways that we can convert our cars to
some sort of clean energy?
Affordable ways?
Yeah. Our plan is actually to let people drive their internal combustion cars until they give out. That we just change the new ones, that every new car that's built. So you don't have to give up your car. It just will be one of those things. Do I think that ultimately we'll be in a position where we end up doing what in California we call cash for clunkers? Yeah. But I think the point is, this is going to happen over a series of decades. And in particular, we're going to have a cutoff when we keep making internal combustion cars that run on gasoline. Because what we've seen, the funny thing about this is, Americans are going to invent new things. We're going to spend a lot of money publicly building public transportation. That's one thing that's going to change. The other hundreds of millions of dollars. But in terms of cars, I believe we're going to come up with some new inventions. Maybe it will just be better electric vehicles. But I won't be surprised if there's other stuff. But you're not going to force somebody to lose their car who can't afford it and move to something they can't afford. This will be something the government will make sure happens over a period of time, so you're never disadvantaged if you want a car. Okay.
If they can come up with inventors that can find ways to convert us,
yes,
without having to buy a new car.
No, this is not going to be something that forces people to buy a new car.
And they'll need a lot of energy stations.
Yes.
Across the nation.
The thing that happens in the world, and this is why I'm talking about rules, if people get a chance to plan over 20 years, then they can make it work in their life. If you change things like that, it's really hard. That's why starting immediately really helps.
Yeah,
because then people know this is the way it's going to go, so now I'm going to change the way I plan and what I buy and how I act.
Great, thank you very much. We have a question from this side of the room.
My name is Hillary Thomas, and I want to know if you're going to do more about organic farming, and are you going to fight the dairy industry and the meat industry?
So let me say this. I don't know if you know this. Will you remind me of your first name?
Hillary.
Hillary.
1L.
1L?
Yes.
For future correspondence, I'm going to keep that in mind. I don't know if you know this, but our family raises grass-finished cattle, chickens, and pigs.
I'm vegan.
And we've been doing it for 15 years to try and show that you can raise animals in a way that sequesters carbon on a net basis and make money. And so our goal is, of course we need to eat less meat, but we also need to raise both crops and animals in a much more regenerative fashion. And so that's why we're doing it, is to try to show how to do it. So do I understand that both agriculture creates about 18% of the greenhouse gases the way we're running it now? I believe I do. Do I also know that farmers are going to be a chief partner around the country and the world in terms of sequestering carbon? I believe I know that too. But are we going to have to redo, look, we have an agricultural industry which is being really hard on our soil, is being really hard in terms of runoff and chemicals, is being really hard up in terms of greenhouse gases, and is also producing food that, we have a health problem that people haven't noticed related to our food.
Yes.
Is this going to have to change? Of course it's going to have to change. And that's why we actually have been doing this for 15 years, to show there are ways to do this that are healthy, rebuild the soil, sequester, carbon, actually work environmentally in terms of water as well. So is this going to have to be part of any realistic program? 100%. And if people eat a lot less animal protein and replace it with vegetable-based proteins, is that going to be good for the planet and them? Probably.
Not for the medical industry.
We have a question on this side.
The youth movement continues. Our next question is from a 9-year-old.
Great, go ahead. What's your name?
My name is Nahom, but you can call me Nathan.
Nathan? You're gonna make it easy for me, okay.
Okay. My question is, how has the Earth been getting that hotter in 2016 and 2015, and the sun has been really cold lately and has been really cool, and why has the Earth been really hot?
Okay. Well, Nathan, the way that I think about this is the Earth is like a ball, okay? And it's surrounded by air. And in the air are a bunch of particles floating around that you mostly can't see, because you can see right through them and see the sky.
Carbon dioxide.
Yeah. That's like, think of it like a blanket. Like you're the Earth, and there's a blanket keeping you warm at night when it's cold. And if you make the blanket a little thicker, then you get a little warmer. And if you make the blanket a lot thicker, then you're hot or you're too hot, and so you push off the blanket. All we've been doing in effect is getting a thicker and thicker blanket. So even though the sun isn't hotter, we're hotter because the blanket is keeping us warmer than we want to be. And so the question is, how do we stop making that blanket thicker and maybe make it a little thinner because we're too hot and now we're starting to sweat?
This is another question that I want to ask.
Lay it on me.
Why do trees, whenever the razor gold of the sun, whenever the razor gold of the sun touches the floor, it mostly bounces back up in the air, and the clouds basically block it, then it makes shades, and then I heard that it makes the earth even warmer.
So you got me on that one, Nick. You're going to have to ask your dad on that. But I love those questions, and I love that you asked them. I really do.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we've got one last question over here.
Hi, Tom. Thanks so much for being here in Nevada. My name's Christiane Brown. I'm with the Climate Reality Group up in Reno.
Great.
I'm also with the newly formed Nevada Climate Justice Coalition that we have in Nevada that we're going to work toward climate solutions. One of the questions you asked about how we're going to hold big corporations accountable, how we're going to make this change, the answer is, what are we going to do about misinformation? What are we going to do about data harvesting? What are we going to do about the misinformation campaign that made our climate hotter and that is impacting everything that's going on? Are you for protecting data rights as human rights and putting some of those programs forward so that we can get truth out to the American people?
Yes. Look, let me say this. As president, you get to direct the Justice Department. And that's a good thing. And you get to decide what you get to go after. And let me say this, we have had a two-tier system of justice in the United States. People within corporations have acted with impunity, and I know that and you know that. So if you sell somebody $150 worth of heroin on the street, you can go to jail practically forever. But if you sell $150 million worth of heroin through a corporation and conspire to sell it, you pay a fine. That can't be right. You can't look at the mortgage crisis and see 3 or 4 million Americans lose their house and be defrauded and no one go to jail when there's over $300 billion worth of fines. Like, is that possibly right? $300 billion worth of damage and no jail time? That doesn't seem right. So in answer to your question, yes, we are going to hold corporations responsible. Yes, you're asking me about data harvesting.
87 million Facebook profiles.
I can't stand it. Look, I understand the point about data harvesting is basically taking data from people unknowingly and selling it and basically figuring out how to spy on Americans. I got that.
And give misinformation about
I understand. So from my standpoint, is that okay? Of course that's not okay. Look, there's been something going on. Now we're talking tech for 1 second, where the government has stopped enforcing rules against consolidation and monopoly. It's stopped, I think this is very akin to the mortgage crisis, where in fact they would say, look, if you read page 67 on the third footnote, we said that could happen. No one reads page 67 in the third footnote. So they're doing things to cover themselves legally, when in fact they know for a fact that what they're doing is harvesting data at the expense of Americans and selling it to whoever. So yes, we're going to have new rules so that corporations have to obey the controls that are in place and have been in place for 100 years, but which they're getting around. And let me say, it ain't that different from the gig economy. The idea that now you're not an employee, although you work full-time and therefore you don't have to get paid a minimum wage or benefits because now all of a sudden you're a self-employed person. That's not true. There is something going on where we're going to have to step up for the American people, and this is a perfect example. I do understand it. And we're going to have to do this across the board to get back some fairness, because we have 40 years basically of a failed Republican experiment that was based on the idea that markets solve everything, trickle down works, cut taxes on rich people and tax revenues will go up, unions are bad for working people, pollution's okay. It's like every one of those is false. We have 40 years of data at this point. We don't have to wonder. But what we do have to do is turn the page. We have to actually understand what's at stake and show up en masse in 2020, the way we did in 2018 in Nevada, and turn the page on what is a failed experiment and get back to the idea that the American people run the show.
So thank you very much for all of these questions. Tom, would you like to give a final message?
I mean, look, what I'm saying is simple. You guys, it's simple. They do complicate it. This is cruelty for money. It is political violence against Americans for money. And there's a very straightforward program. It's exact. Mr. Trump is a cruel person. And he's a hater. And he's a racist. But he's actually following the exact same thing that I've seen in every red state. His program is cut taxes on rich people and corporations. Okay, he did that. Over $1 trillion. Cut education, K through 12 and higher ed. Okay, that happens every single time. Cut healthcare. Okay, that's right there. Allow as much pollution as corporations want. Okay, break unions and go after working people's rights. That's the program. That's exactly what he's done. He's done it in a particularly cruel, racist, and illegal way, but he's actually following a script that's all over the place. All I'm saying is this, it's not complicated. Every piece of that is political violence against Americans. And I have a very simple attitude about this. And I've said this before. I played sports my whole life. If you're my teammate, that's the relationship I want. And if you're somebody's teammate, then you're all in for that person, and you're expecting them to be all in for you. And I always say, nobody runs down the field and kicks my teammate in the face. It's not going to happen. And that's exactly what I'm seeing in the United States. Basically, people running down the field and kicking the American people in the face. Whether it's kids, or working people, or students, or seniors. I don't care. That's my team. You guys are my team. It's not going to happen.
Thank you very much for everyone for your participation, for this amazing conversation. And I know Tom has other events and responsibilities, but we have a little bit of time for some photo opportunities, some pictures. So.
But thank you, Felipe.